My beloved child, before you do anything else, before you let your mind rush ahead to the next task, the next worry, the next distraction, I need you to pause for just a moment and listen. Not because I want to interrupt your day without reason, not because I want to demand something from you, but because there is a reason your eyes are here right now. There is a reason these words appeared before you at this exact moment, and deep within your heart, beneath the noise, beneath the pressure, beneath everything that has been pulling at your attention, a part of you already knows that this moment feels different. You may not be able to explain it. You may not have the words for it. But something inside you sensed that you should stay. Something inside you felt a gentle pull that would not let you scroll away without first listening. My child, that feeling is not an accident. You have called many things coincidence in your life. You have looked back on certain moments and wondered how they happened. You have questioned whether some encounters were random, whether some conversations meant anything at all, whether some doors opened or closed for reasons you could never understand. But I want you to know something tonight. I am far more involved in your life than you realize. I am present in ways you cannot always see. I am working in places you cannot always reach. And I am speaking in moments you often mistake for ordinary. This moment is one of them. You may have been carrying questions in your heart for a long time, questions you never fully shared with anyone, questions that followed you into quiet rooms and restless nights, questions that stayed with you while you smiled in front of others and pretended everything was fine. You have wondered if your prayers truly mattered. You have wondered if I still heard your voice. You have wondered if I still had a purpose for your life after everything you have been through. And perhaps you never expected an answer to come like this. Perhaps you thought if I spoke it would happen in some dramatic way. Perhaps you thought it would arrive through a sign so obvious that no doubt could remain. But often, my child, I speak through gentle moments. I speak through quiet interruptions. I speak through unexpected pauses that seem small until you realize they changed everything. That is why I am asking you not to rush past this, not because these words themselves are magical, not because this is about information, but because timing matters. There are moments when heaven draws near, in ways your heart can recognize even when your mind struggles to understand. There are moments prepared long before you arrive at them, moments woven together through circumstances, delays, conversations, victories, disappointments, and prayers. Moments that seem ordinary on the surface but carry something deeper underneath. This is one of those moments. I know you have been tired. I know life has not unfolded the way you expected. I know there have been seasons when you felt lost in the middle of your own story. Seasons when you kept moving forward without fully knowing why. Seasons when hope felt distant and certainty felt impossible to find. Yet somehow, through all of it, you are still here. You are still searching. You are still listening. And that matters more than you know. Because long before this day arrived, I knew you would be here. Long before this hour appeared on the clock, I saw this exact moment. I saw every burden you would carry, every disappointment you would survive, every silent prayer you would whisper, every tear you would wipe away when nobody else was looking. I saw it all. And knowing all of that, I still prepared this appointment with you. Not because you earned it, not because you were perfect, not because you never doubted, but because you are mine, because I care about what happens in your heart, because I have not stopped watching over you even for a single moment. So do not dismiss this feeling that brought you here. Do not assume this is random. Do not convince yourself that this is just another passing moment that means nothing. There is a reason you stopped. There is a reason you stayed. There is a reason your attention was drawn here tonight. And although you may not understand the full reason yet, you do not need to. Not right now. For now, all I ask is that you remain present. Let your heart become still. Let the noise settle. Let your spirit breathe again. Because there is something I want you to hear. Something you have needed for longer than you realize. Something that has been waiting for the right time, the right moment, the right opening in your heart. And my child, that moment has finally arrived. My child, before you can understand what has been weighing down your heart, you must first allow yourself to be honest about how tired you have become. Not the kind of tired that sleep can fix. Not the kind of tired that disappears after a quiet weekend or a day away from responsibility. I am speaking about a deeper exhaustion. the kind that settles into your thoughts, the kind that follows you from morning until night, the kind that makes even simple things feel heavier than they should. I see it. I have seen it for longer than you realize. You have been carrying more than most people know. You have learned how to smile when your heart feels worn. You have learned how to answer questions with polite words while hiding the battles taking place inside you. You have become skilled at appearing strong, so skilled, in fact, that many people assume you are doing better than you really are. Yet beneath that strength there has been a silent struggle. Beneath the calm surface there has been a hidden pain that few have ever truly understood. There have been days when your mind refused to rest. Days when the same worries circled endlessly through your thoughts. Days when you questioned yourself more than you encouraged yourself. Days when disappointment lingered longer than you wanted to admit. You kept moving. You kept showing up. You kept doing what needed to be done. But inside, something felt drained. Something felt stretched thin. Sometimes you could not even explain why. You only knew that your heart felt heavy. I know about the moments you never talk about. The moments when the room became quiet and all the emotions you had pushed aside suddenly returned. The moments when old wounds still whispered. The moments when memories resurfaced without warning. The moments when you wondered why certain hurts still affected you after all this time. You tried to move on. You tried to stay positive. You tried to convince yourself that everything was fine. Yet the ache remained, not always loudly, not always visibly, but quietly present beneath the surface. My child, there is a reason you feel exhausted. You have been carrying burdens that were never meant to live inside your heart for this long. You have been carrying pressure, expectations, disappointments, questions without answers. You have carried concern for people you love. You have carried responsibilities that seem to multiply faster than your strength. You have carried fears about the future, while still trying to recover from the past. Little by little, the weight accumulated. Little by little, emotional fatigue settled into places you once held hope. Some days you felt lonely even in crowded rooms. Some days you felt misunderstood even when surrounded by people who cared about you. Some days you wished someone could simply look into your heart and understand what you were carrying without requiring you to explain it. Because there are pains that are difficult to describe. There are struggles that do not fit neatly into words. There are wounds that remain hidden because you do not know how to reveal them. I know those places. I know the silent sighs. I know the moments when your spirit felt weary. I know the private disappointments you never shared. I know the emotional weight behind the brave face you offered the world. And I want you to understand something tonight. You do not have to pretend with me. You do not have to hide your exhaustion. You do not have to minimize your pain. You do not have to convince me that you are stronger than you feel. I already see the hidden burden. I already know the silent struggle. I already understand the emotional fatigue that has followed you through this season. And even now, as you listen, I am closer to those wounded places than you can imagine. And because I am closer to those wounded places than you can imagine, I also see something else that has been quietly growing beneath the surface. It is not the burden itself. It is not the exhaustion itself. It is the story you slowly began telling yourself because of the exhaustion. The belief that formed after enough disappointments. The conclusion you reached after carrying pain for too long. My child, many of the deepest struggles in your heart did not begin with what happened to you. They began with what you started believing about yourself because of what happened to you. Little by little, fear began to speak. Little by little, self-doubt began to whisper, not loudly, not all at once, but gradually, patiently, repeatedly. And because those whispers stayed around long enough, they started sounding like truth. You began to wonder if you were forgotten. You began to wonder if your prayers mattered. You began to wonder if everyone else was moving forward while you remained stuck. You began to question your worth when certain doors did not open. You questioned your value when certain people walked away. You questioned your purpose when life became harder than expected. And without realizing it, you started measuring yourself by your disappointments. You started measuring yourself by your struggles. You started measuring yourself by your wounds. My child, I know the thoughts that visit you when nobody else is around. I know the moments when you look at your life and silently ask, what is wrong with me? I know the moments when you compare your journey to someone else's and feel like you are falling behind. I know the moments when you wonder whether you are strong enough, faithful enough, capable enough, or worthy enough. Those thoughts may feel familiar now, but familiarity does not make them true. Some of the things you have believed about yourself were born from pain, not from truth. Some of the labels you placed upon your heart were created by fear, not by me. Fear told you that you were not enough. Fear told you that you would never change. Fear told you that your best days were behind you. Fear told you that you were carrying your struggles alone. Fear told you that nobody truly understood. Fear told you that your failures defined you. And after hearing those messages long enough, you started building your expectations around them. You stopped hoping as freely. You stopped believing as boldly. You stopped seeing yourself through eyes of compassion. Instead, you became your own harshest critic. You forgave others more easily than you forgave yourself. You offered grace to others while withholding it from your own heart. You noticed your flaws more quickly than your growth. You remembered your mistakes more clearly than your victories. My child, the hidden pain was difficult enough, but the false belief that grew from the pain made the burden even heavier. Because when a person begins believing they are forgotten, every silence feels like rejection. When a person begins believing they are not enough, every challenge feels like proof. When a person begins believing they are alone, every difficult season feels endless. That is why your heart has felt so weary, not only because of what happened around you, but because of what those experiences convinced you to believe about yourself. Yet even now, I see something beautiful within you. Despite the doubt, you are still listening. Despite the fear, you are still searching. Despite the questions, you have not completely given up. There is still a small part of your heart that longs for truth. There is still a part of you that hopes there is more to your story than disappointment. There is still a part of you that wants to believe you are seen, loved, remembered, and valued. And my child, that longing did not come from fear. That longing came from the place inside you that still recognizes my voice, even after all you have been through. And that part of you that still recognizes my voice is seeing something that fear has been unable to erase. Because while you have spent so much time looking at yourself through the lens of disappointment, I have been looking at you through a very different lens. My child, what if the story you have been telling yourself is incomplete? What if the things you call weakness are not the things I see first? What if the places where you think you have failed are not the places where I see defeat? You have spent many days focusing on what is missing. You have focused on prayers that have not yet been answered. You have focused on doors that did not open. You have focused on mistakes you wish you could undo. You have focused on moments when you felt afraid, uncertain, or overwhelmed. But I need you to understand something tonight. My perspective is different from yours. Where you see someone barely holding on, I see someone who kept going through storms that could have convinced them to quit. Where you see exhaustion, I see endurance. Where you see weakness, I see courage that continued moving forward, even while trembling. Where you see delay, I see growth that was taking place beneath the surface. My child, you often judge your life by visible results. You look for evidence in what has already happened. You look for proof in circumstances. You look for confirmation in outcomes. But I see things that cannot yet be measured by what is visible. I see the hidden strength that formed every time you chose not to give up. I see the compassion that grew from your pain. I see the wisdom that developed through difficult seasons. I see the patience that was being built when answers seemed far away. I see the faith that remained alive even when certainty was nowhere to be found. You call it surviving. I call it growing. You call it struggling. I call it becoming stronger. You call it another difficult season. I call it a chapter that has been shaping your heart in ways you cannot fully understand yet. There were moments when you thought nothing good was happening. Moments when you believed you were standing still. Moments when you assumed all progress had stopped. Yet while you were looking for dramatic change, I was doing quiet work within you. While you were waiting for circumstances to improve, I was expanding your capacity to trust. While you were searching for visible breakthroughs, I was strengthening invisible foundations. Growth does not always announce itself. Sometimes it happens silently. Sometimes it happens in hidden places. Sometimes it happens so gradually that you cannot recognize it until you look back and realize you are no longer the person you used to be. My beloved child, there is more strength inside you than you realize. Not because you created it on your own, not because you never struggled, but because I have been walking with you through every step of this journey. The fact that you are still here matters. The fact that you still care matters. The fact that you still long for peace, still long for healing, still long for truth, reveals something beautiful that fear has tried to hide from you. You are not as broken as you think. You are not as defeated as you feel. You are not as forgotten as fear has suggested. There is unseen growth within you. There is hidden resilience within you. There is a quiet strength within you that has been developing through every challenge you faced. And while you have been focusing on the places where you fell short, I have been noticing the countless moments when you got back up. While you have been remembering your failures, I have been remembering your perseverance. While you have been questioning your value, I have been seeing a beloved child who continued moving forward despite carrying more than most people ever knew. That is why my view of you is so different from your own. I do not see only your wounds. I see what survived them. I do not see only your tears. I see the faith that remained through them. I do not see only the chapters that hurt. I see the person who continued growing through every page of the story. And because I see the person who continued growing through every page of the story, I also understand the question that has lingered in your heart for so long. It is the question you have asked in quiet moments. The question you have whispered when another prayer seemed unanswered. The question that rises when you look at the distance between where you are and where you hoped you would be. Why is this taking so long? Why must I wait? My child, waiting is one of the hardest seasons for the human heart because it often feels like nothing is happening. It feels silent. It feels empty. It feels uncertain. You look around and see movement in other people's lives. You see doors opening. You see opportunities appearing. You see progress that can be measured and celebrated. Meanwhile, your own journey can feel hidden beneath the surface, as though time itself has slowed down. But what feels like inactivity is often preparation. What feels like delay is often a process. What feels like being overlooked is often growth happening where human eyes cannot see. Think about a seed placed into the ground. The moment it disappears beneath the soil, it does not look successful. It does not look impressive. In fact, from the outside, it appears as though nothing is happening at all. Days pass, weeks pass. Yet beneath the surface, something important is taking place. Roots are forming before branches appear. Strength is developing before beauty becomes visible. Stability is being created before growth can be sustained. My child, there have been seasons in your life when you felt buried, but you were not being buried. You were being planted. There is a difference. Buried things are forgotten. Planted things are prepared for future growth. While you were asking why the process was taking so long, roots were extending deeper than you realized. While you were wondering why certain answers had not arrived, character was being formed within you. While you were frustrated by what seemed absent, foundations were being strengthened for what is still to come. You have often wanted immediate clarity. You wanted to understand the entire journey while standing in the middle of it. But seasons do not work that way. Spring does not arrive in the middle of winter simply because winter feels uncomfortable. A harvest does not appear the day after a seed is planted. Growth follows a process. Preparation follows a process. Even the most beautiful things in creation develop through seasons. My beloved child, there were blessings you asked for before you were ready to carry them. There were opportunities you desired before the roots beneath your life had grown deep enough to support them. There were answers you wanted immediately that would have arrived before you possessed the strength, wisdom, or peace needed to sustain them. I was not ignoring you. I was preparing you. I was not abandoning you. I was developing you. I was not withholding good things out of indifference. I was carefully shaping the person who would eventually receive them. I know the waiting has felt long. I know there were days when hope felt difficult. I know there were moments when you wondered whether the process would ever end. But even during those moments, growth continued. Even during those moments, roots kept reaching deeper. Even during those moments, something valuable was being formed inside you. The waiting season was never empty. It was never meaningless. It was never wasted. Every lesson, every challenge, every quiet moment contributed to a work that is still unfolding. One day you will look back and see connections you cannot currently see. One day you will understand why certain chapters could not be rushed. One day you will recognize that the season you wanted to escape became one of the seasons that strengthened you most. Until then, remember this gentle truth. When a seed is growing beneath the soil, its progress is real even when it is invisible. And my child, so is yours. And because your progress is real even when it is invisible, there is another question that deserves an answer. If the waiting season is not empty, then what exactly has been happening inside you all this time? Who are you becoming through this process? My child, many people focus so much on what they are trying to reach that they forget to notice what they are becoming along the way. They pay attention to destinations but overlook transformation. They measure success by outcomes while missing the quiet work taking place within their own hearts. Yet some of the most valuable things being formed in your life cannot be seen in a photograph, measured on a calendar, or displayed for the world to applaud. They are being built deep within your character. They are becoming part of who you are. Think about the person you were before this season began. Think about how quickly frustration once discouraged you. Think about how easily uncertainty once unsettled you. Think about how much of your peace depended upon circumstances going exactly as planned. Now look at how far you have come. Not because every struggle disappeared, not because every question was answered, but because something inside you continued developing through every challenge. Wisdom has been growing within you, not the kind of wisdom that comes from reading information, but the kind that comes from living through experiences, the kind that teaches you what truly matters, the kind that helps you recognize the difference between what is urgent and what is important. The kind that allows you to see beyond temporary emotions and understand deeper truths. There are things you understand now that you could not have understood before this journey. There is also resilience growing within you. You may not always notice it because resilience rarely announces itself. It reveals itself quietly. It shows up when you keep going despite discouragement. It shows up when you face another difficult day and still choose to move forward. It shows up when life becomes heavier than expected and yet something within you refuses to surrender to hopelessness. Every challenge you endured strengthened muscles of the soul that comfort alone could never develop. Patience has also been taking root within you. I know patience is not celebrated by the world. The world prefers speed. It prefers instant results and immediate rewards. But patience creates depth. Patience teaches trust. Patience allows wisdom to mature. Patience develops a steady heart that does not collapse every time circumstances shift. The very delays you once resisted have been teaching you how to remain grounded when answers take longer than expected. And perhaps one of the most beautiful things being formed inside you is compassion. Pain has a way of opening the heart. The struggles you have faced have made you more sensitive to the burdens carried by others. You understand loneliness differently now. You understand disappointment differently now. You understand silent battles differently now. Because of what you have walked through, you are becoming someone capable of offering understanding instead of judgment, gentleness instead of criticism, and kindness instead of indifference. My child, you are not simply passing through a season. You are being shaped by it. You are becoming wiser. You are becoming stronger. You are becoming more patient. You are becoming more compassionate. And while the world often celebrates visible achievements, heaven recognizes the beauty of inner transformation. One day you will look back and realize that the greatest work of this season was not merely what happened around you. It was what was quietly being built within you all along. And if all of this inner transformation has been taking place within you, then a gentle question naturally follows. What should you do now, after the waiting, after the questioning? After the long season of carrying burdens that felt heavier than your heart was meant to hold, my child, the answer is not as complicated as you may think. It is not found in striving harder. It is not found in exhausting yourself trying to control every outcome. It is not found in having every answer before taking the next step. The invitation before you is simpler, yet deeper. It begins with letting go. There are things you have been carrying that no longer belong in your hands. There are worries you revisit every day as though rehearsing them will somehow change tomorrow. There are fears you continue feeding even though they have never given you peace. There are disappointments you keep reopening, hoping they will finally explain themselves. There are questions you have held so tightly that they have become heavier than the answers themselves. My child, let them go, not because they never mattered, not because the pain was not real, but because carrying them forever was never part of your calling. Some burdens become so familiar that you forget what life feels like without them. Some fears stay so long that they begin to feel like permanent residents in the heart. Yet not everything that feels familiar is meant to remain. There are seasons when release becomes necessary for growth. There are moments when open hands accomplish more than clenched fists. There are times when trust begins where control finally ends. I know letting go feels risky. I know part of you worries that if you release your grip, everything will fall apart. But consider how much energy has already been spent trying to hold together things beyond your control. Consider how many sleepless thoughts have produced no lasting peace. Consider how many times fear promised protection but only delivered exhaustion. My child, there is another way. Let go of the need to understand everything immediately. Let go of the belief that every chapter must make sense before you can move forward. Let go of the pressure to carry tomorrow before it arrives. Let go of the responsibility of being your own source of strength. And there is something else I gently invite you to consider. Forgive. Not because what happened was acceptable. Not because the wound did not hurt. Not because you are pretending nothing happened. Forgiveness is not denial. Forgiveness is release. It is choosing not to allow yesterday's pain to continue governing today's peace. Sometimes the person who needs forgiveness is someone else. Sometimes the person who needs forgiveness is yourself. My child, you have carried enough shame, you have replayed enough mistakes, you have punished yourself long enough for things that cannot be changed. Mercy was never meant to be something you offer everyone except yourself. Release what keeps pulling your heart backward. Then trust. Not with blind certainty about every detail of the future. Not with perfect confidence. Simply trust one step at a time. Trust that growth has not been wasted. Trust that the process still has purpose. Trust that even now, paths are unfolding that you cannot yet see. Trust that what is being built within you is preparing you for what lies ahead. Trust does not mean the absence of questions. Trust means continuing forward, even when every answer has not yet arrived. And finally, surrender. Not as an act of defeat, but as an act of peace. Surrender the pressure to carry everything alone. Surrender the illusion that you must have everything figured out. Surrender the endless striving that has left your soul tired. There is freedom waiting on the other side of surrender. There is rest waiting on the other side of trust. There is peace waiting on the other side of release. And perhaps today, more than anything else, the invitation before you is simply this. Stop carrying what was never yours to carry forever. And when you finally begin releasing what was never yours to carry forever, something remarkable starts to happen inside your heart. Space begins to open where fear once lived. Peace begins to enter places that have been crowded with worry. Hope begins to breathe again. And that hope naturally asks a question. What comes next? What is waiting ahead that I cannot yet see? My child, the future is often difficult to trust because it has not arrived yet. Human eyes naturally focus on what is visible. They focus on present circumstances, present limitations, present disappointments. But life has always contained more possibilities than what can be seen in a single moment. There are chapters you have not read yet. There are conversations you have not had yet. There are opportunities you have not encountered yet. There are moments of healing, growth, and restoration that have not unfolded yet. That is why you must be careful not to mistake your current season for your final destination. The chapter you are living now is not the entire story. There was a time when you thought certain difficult seasons would never end. Yet they did. There were moments when you believed certain wounds would never soften. Yet they gradually did. There were situations that once felt permanent, but eventually changed. Life has a way of moving forward, even when the heart struggles to imagine how. My child, there is still more ahead of you than behind you. There are still lessons to learn, joys to experience, people to meet, and purposes to discover. The future may not arrive exactly as you expected, but that does not mean it cannot be beautiful. Sometimes the most meaningful chapters begin after the plans you originally created fall apart. Sometimes restoration arrives through unexpected doors. Sometimes breakthrough comes in forms you never would have chosen but later cannot imagine living without. I am not asking you to predict tomorrow. I am not asking you to create a perfect picture of the future. I am simply inviting you to remain open to possibility. Remain open to growth. Remain open to the idea that life can become more than what fear has convinced you to expect. There are opportunities that do not yet exist in your field of vision. There are answers that are still making their way toward understanding. There are connections, insights, and moments of clarity that have not yet arrived. Just because you cannot see them today does not mean they are absent. Think of the sunrise. Long before the first light becomes visible on the horizon, the morning is already approaching. Darkness does not stop the dawn from coming. It only hides it temporarily. In the same way, uncertainty does not stop new chapters from forming. It simply prevents you from seeing them clearly before their appointed time. My child, restoration is not always the return of what was lost. Sometimes restoration is becoming someone stronger, wiser, and more peaceful than you were before. Sometimes restoration means discovering new purpose where old expectations once stood. Sometimes restoration means realizing that what seemed like an ending was actually an invitation into something deeper. There is still room in your story for joy. There is still room in your story for growth. There is still room in your story for meaningful relationships, renewed strength, fresh opportunities, and unexpected blessings. Not because life will suddenly become perfect, but because your journey is still unfolding. The page has not been fully written. The chapter has not fully closed. The road does not end here. So, lift your eyes gently beyond today's concerns. Lift them beyond today's limitations. Lift them beyond today's uncertainty. There is a future you cannot yet see, a new chapter waiting beyond the horizon, and possibilities that are quietly growing even now, just as roots once grew beneath the soil before the first sign of life appeared above the ground. And as you stand at the edge of this moment, looking back on everything that has been placed before your heart, I do not want you to leave carrying more weight than when you arrived. I want you to leave carrying something different. I want you to leave carrying peace. Not the kind of peace that depends on perfect circumstances, not the kind of peace that appears only when every problem has been solved, but the kind of peace that settles deep within the soul and quietly reminds you that you do not have to face tomorrow alone. My child, remember what you have learned. The burden you carried was real, but it was never meant to define you. The doubts that spoke to your heart were loud, but they were never the final truth about who you are. The waiting season felt long, but it was never empty. The process felt slow, but growth was happening even when you could not see it. The challenges you faced were difficult, but they were also shaping wisdom, resilience, patience, and compassion within you. And the future that remains unseen is still filled with possibility beyond what fear can imagine. So take a deep breath now. Let your heart become still. Let the pressure to figure everything out begin to loosen its grip. Let the need to carry every answer fade into the background. You do not need to know every step before taking the next one. You do not need to understand every chapter before turning the page. You do not need to have perfect certainty in order to keep moving forward. Sometimes peace begins when striving ends. Sometimes healing begins when resistance softens. Sometimes strength begins when you finally stop pretending you must carry everything by yourself. My child, may your heart remember that growth often happens quietly. May your mind remember that progress is still progress, even when it feels slow. May your spirit remember that difficult seasons are chapters, not permanent identities. May you walk forward with greater gentleness toward yourself. May you speak to yourself with more compassion than criticism. May you recognize how far you have already come instead of only focusing on how far remains to go. There will still be days that challenge you. There will still be moments that test your patience. There will still be questions that do not receive immediate answers. But let those moments remind you of something important. You have already survived seasons you once thought would break you. You have already grown through chapters you never expected to overcome. You have already been strengthened by experiences that once seemed impossible to endure. The same grace that carried you then will continue carrying you forward. The same wisdom that has been forming within you will continue guiding your steps. The same peace that is touching your heart now can remain with you long after this moment ends. So walk gently into the days ahead. Release what no longer belongs in your hands. Trust the process that continues unfolding. Welcome the growth that is still taking place. Remain open to new chapters, new opportunities, and new beginnings. And whenever fear tries to convince you that nothing is changing, remember the seed beneath the soil. Remember the roots growing in hidden places. Remember that the most important transformations often happen long before they become visible. My beloved child, carry this truth with you wherever you go. You are not defined by your hardest season. You are not defined by your deepest wound. You are not defined by your greatest fear. You are being shaped by grace, strengthened through the journey, and prepared for chapters that have not yet been written. May peace rest upon your mind. May courage strengthen your heart. May hope remain alive within your spirit. And may you move forward knowing this simple truth that can never be taken from you. Your story is still unfolding, and the best work is often happening in places the eye cannot yet see.